the company officer truly has the day-to-day influence over people. Company officer has the ability to make or break people's attitudes, to make or break people's careers. It can't be overstated how important that position is. I think that sometimes our company officers get a little disenfranchised because they think that I don't have the influence. I came in here and I wanted to change the world. You're missing the point. We've got the greatest direct influence over our people. Where the chief might be able to influence a strategy, company officer has the most influence to a person day after day after day. Welcome to Ops Talk, Westminster Fire Department's operational training podcast, where we share ideas and knowledge through honest conversations, highlighting the people who do the work. I'm Eric Linnenburger, Deputy Chief of Operations. While built as a resource for our members, we invite the greater fire service and the community to be part of the conversation. What we share reflects our current approach under present conditions. Always follow your department's procedures and guidelines. Hey everyone, welcome to Ops Talk. Just a quick note before we jump in. In this episode, I sit down with 3 of our lieutenants and we talk about the position and we go super deep. We had such a great conversation that we're going to go ahead and make this into a 2-part episode. So in part 1 today, we're going to focus on the role itself, our guest paths to leadership, and what the job actually looks like, what it takes to be a company officer in today's fire service. Part 2, which drops in 2 weeks, will shift towards leadership development, mentorship, and how to prepare if you're thinking about promotion. Let's get into part 1. Welcome to the Ops Talk podcast. I'm Deputy Chief Eric Linnenburger, and we have a good one for you today. In this episode, we profile possibly the most critical and impactful position in the fire service, the tip of the spear. That's the first line company officer. For our department, that's the fire lieutenant position. My 3 guests are going to help us go beyond the job description and dig into what the job is really like. My hope is that you'll see that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to being successful in this position, but there are some shared values and principles that are paramount. So let's introduce our guests. I'm going to have them go around the horn and share kind of their basic bios, and we're going to start with Nolan, because out of respect for our elders, of course. Nolan, do you mind getting us rolling here?
No, not at all. I'm Nolan Bailey. I'm a lieutenant on B shift on Engine 2. I got on at Westminster Fire 2002, so I hit year number 24 next year. It's so weird to say that, Chief. I remember when you and I were rocking a medic unit. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, and turns out it is. But 2002. I went through medic school 2004 and promoted to paramedic in 2005. I made lieutenant after my 3rd attempt in 2017. My path was a little bit atypical when I finished the lieutenant process and got the assignment. My first assignment was the training division. So I was assigned to our Westy Fire Training Division, 2-year commitment. So I came out of the training division in 2020 and came online and still currently at my assignment that I was at when I came out of the training division. So going on 8 years in the lieutenant position. I wish I had a really cool story. Like I always wanted to be a firefighter from the time I was a little kid. I'm definitely not that guy. It kind of was an epiphany to me. I was finishing up my first year of college, playing football right at the end of the school year after a workout. Anybody that's played college sports, you know that it's a full-time job. So we finished up a workout. School's about to end. I already knew I wasn't coming back. And we were kind of going around the horn, the group of us guys that were there, talking about what we were going to do. And I said, I don't know, maybe I'll go be a firefighter or something. And it just kind of clicked there. And that next fall I was at Red Rocks and went all in from there. So that was a few years ago. But that's my story.
Hey, Sam, how about you? You've got an interesting story.
All right. My name's Sam. Been on the department. I'm in my 11th year. I was hired in 2015. I did 4 years as a firefighter, 4 years as a medic, and I have been a company officer on Engine 1 on B shift for the last 3 years. Similar to Nolan, my path in life was rocky in the beginning. I didn't really know who I wanted to be or what I was about, and that led to me getting in with some some bad groups and making some mistakes. Unfortunately, there was a culminating point in my life where, a judge told me that I had to pick between one federal institution or the next. And so I chose the U.S. military. This is during the time of the global war on terror. This is 2006. Took me some time to get into the military, just because there's certain parameters you have to meet and certain things that I needed to change in my life to meet the qualifications of a soldier. Joined the U.S. Army in 2008. And upon joining, I found that purpose that I had been searching for, probably within the first few hours of basic training. Um, and because of that, I committed myself, mind, soul, and spirit to becoming a soldier. I enlisted as regular Army infantry. I had no special contracts or identifiers. My goal was to enlist, complete training, and immediately deploy to the front of the fight in the global war on terror. And upon completion of basic training, I was approached by my drill sergeants and the company commander, who offered me a contract to enter selection for Ranger Regiment. During that time, I had no idea if that was something I was going to be successful at. I didn't even really know what that pipeline looked like. I just knew that airborne school was next. And I took it and I said, let's see how far I can go. And about a year later, I was fortunate to complete Ranger Indoctrination Program, which is what it was called at the time. Now it's called Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, or RASP, and deployed or was assigned to 2nd Ranger Battalion in Fort Lewis, Washington, where I was stationed for all of about 2.5 months prior to hitting the ground in Iraq. And upon hitting the ground in Iraq, 6 hours later, we were on our first combat mission. Did a tour with Ranger Regiment, stayed in Ranger Regiment for a little while. Following that, changed my assignment was changed, and I became a personal security bodyguard for commander of 5th Brigade, Striker Brigade combat team, and deployed to Afghanistan for 13 months. I had planned on making the military a career. It was everything that I was looking for. It had that team environment that I was in search for. It had a large physical fitness component. And I realized during that time that if you were to apply your mind to something and say, no matter how bad it gets, I'm not going to quit, you would be successful. The mind is generally weaker than the body, is what I have found in my mind, and found in my experience in the military. And I really learned who I was as a person and what I was capable of. I completed U.S. Army Ranger School, and prior to going to Ranger School, I met my wife. And while I was in Ranger School, I had a lot of time to do thinking while pulling security in the middle of the woods in Florida, in the swamp, and decided to propose to her upon coming back from Ranger School. And then priorities started to shift, especially with the kind of job that I was in. Didn't see her very much, and that wasn't working well. So the time came to re-enlist, and I was at another turning point in my life and had to decide which direction I wanted to go. Chose to leave the Army and really struggled upon ETS from the military. Overnight, lost my identity, lost all my friends, lost that sense of camaraderie, and now I was a 25-year-old without a college degree in an economic recession and unhireable due to my lack of college experience. So I was floundering, trying to find, how do I fit myself back into civilian life, which operates very differently from the military and was frustrating, and committed myself to remaining as physically active as I could by joining a CrossFit gym, where I encountered some South Metro firefighters like, hey, have you thought about being a firefighter? And I'm like, man, I haven't. And my grandfather was a captain at San Diego Fire. He retired from there, and he had always said great things about it. And so I went all in on becoming a firefighter because I wanted that sense of camaraderie to operate as a member of a crew and a team. I was hired with Westy in 2015, and that's my story. Here I am now.
Greg Schar.
Yeah, so been with Westy Fire for about a little over 8 years now. I started off as a firefighter, did that for about a year and a half. I went to paramedic school, did that for about 5 years, and then I'm recently promoted. So I've been in the lieutenant position for about 6 months now. Still fresh, still learning. I started off after my promotion. I started off at on engine 4 on C shift, and then went to truck 2 most recently. With that, I'm now the C shift lead of the tech team, working as an arson investigator online, and then joined the PPE committee not that long ago, so working through some stuff with that. Prior to joining Westminster, I worked for the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office for about 4.5 years, primarily in the jail, working closely with the U.S. Marshals and the FBI due to some of the clientele that they hide up in the mountains there. Yeah, it's all been really good experience. I volunteered for about 6.5 years prior to getting hired at Westy out at Pleasant View. Kind of held every rank there for a short while, firefighter, engineer, and I was a lieutenant for a short bit. And then, yeah, getting into the fire service, I kind of have that little kid story of, I was 10 years old when 9/11 happened, which put me at kind of the perfect age of being impressionable but able to understand. And about that time, they uh, they called Mr. Rogers to come talk on the news. Kind of everyone was feeling bad, so they brought Mr. Rogers in to kind of start talking and make everybody feel better, kind of give everybody the warm fuzzies after a horrible situation. And I sat down and watched that on the news with my parents. And one of the things that I remember is that, my mother always said, in times of trouble, look for the helpers. So it was kind of a natural fit that from, what was that, fourth grade, I didn't just want to look for the helpers, I wanted to be a helper. And that kind of brought me towards the route of the fire service. So a little bit of a longer path than I had hoped. I started testing right out of high school at 18 years old. It took me about 7 years to get hired career, but kind of every step along the way kind of prepared me for getting into this spot.
So all three of you, very, very different stories. And I put this together intentionally because I really want to show people that there is not one personality type. There's not one bit of experience that is required of being a firefighter, but specifically we're going to drill into that fire lieutenant position today, that first line company officer position. There are some principles I think that have to be present, some values that have to be present. Obviously, you guys have demonstrated just in your bios today that service is important, that team is important, those sorts of things. But as we go in here, this was an intentional thing. We did bring Nolan in as the old guy. We've got Greg as the brand new guy. And I imagine after 6 months, you've pretty much got it figured out now, because that's about how long it takes to get everything figured out, right?
Yeah, that's what I keep getting told. So I'm waiting for that to kick in. So whenever that happens, that'd be great.
Let me know when
It,
you do figure it all out. Let me
Oh,
know.
cool. So it's not 6 months. Great.
and Sam is right in the middle of the grind. I know he's already had some experiences under his belt, but he's in that kind of you know tough spot where you're like, well, I should have it all figured out. That's what they tell me anyway, but I know that the challenges keep coming. So I hope to dig into some of those today and learn from all of your experiences. And Greg, I was thinking about, when you're giving your bio, and you did start on Engine 4, but then you got moved to a truck company pretty quick, which there's got to be a lot of trust in someone, especially a brand new lieutenant, to move them to that truck company. And you moved in with I don't want to say a tough assignment by any means, but you are by far the youngest, least tenured person on your crew.
Yes. Yeah. I want to say most of my crew has over 20 years in the fire service, specifically with Westy. So, I mean, I always joke that, my engineer and my backstepper that's usually on the truck with me, they together have more experience than I've been alive. So it's kind of a different spot to be in. So it's interesting just dealing with some people that have a lot more experience, but it's a huge benefit too.
So I think this is a great place to start. I know you were pretty thought out. You were intentional about how you came in to that role, because you knew what you were getting. We're a smaller department. We know all the people, the personalities, the experience levels. What were some of your approaches for coming into that role where you knew you were going to be the least tenured person on the crew, but you were going to be the boss?
Um, a lot of it just starts with respect. Respect those around you. Respect their experience. Respect what they're doing and what they've done. Um, and then there is an element that you kind of have to prove yourself along the way. So I knew what I wanted to do within our department for quite a while. So I knew that if I wanted to be a lieutenant, I needed to start acting like a lieutenant and start building that reputation along the way. um, that I am professional. I may not have the experience, but I'm going out and getting the training and figuring out this job. And there's nothing, everything to experience can really be secondary, and you can only make up so much in training, but going out there and getting it and starting to build a reputation that I'm a hard worker, I have a good work ethic, you can trust me, and then building upon that trust in those relationships and working together is critically important to be able to get them to just believe that they can follow you. It's not that they will immediately, but just believe that there's some opportunity for them to follow you, and take that and keep building on it. Recognize that you're making progress, and you just got to keep building on it and keep pushing on it.
Yeah, it's much easier said than done. And we talk, I think every single episode I've done of this so far, we've talked about the importance of relationships, and it's kind of soft. It's kind of a soft and fluffy word, but man, it it's so true on every single level, and it's the reason we're all here today, right? We've all had our own relationships through the years. Like Nolan, you mentioned, you and I used to work together on that medic unit. We had some crazy experiences together, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Greg and I worked together on a crew,
Mhm.
and Sam and I have worked together a little bit as well. And so you have to lay that foundation early, and then just really work to build on it. I think so many people are, especially right now in our instant gratification world we're in, think that it just happens, or it happens with the badge, or it happens with the collar brass. And we also know firefighters, and maybe it's just our department, but they can be a little bit cynical and a little judgy until you've proven yourself, or you've built that relationship of trust, right?
Yep.
And I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but maybe I did through the years. And how about you, Nolan? What did you kind of do to build some of the trust in those relationships? And you did have a kind of a different path, right? You came through the training division first, which I think there's pros and cons to that. And you definitely probably came out with some skills that you didn't have before. Can you just share your approach to your first crew, and
Yeah.
also that time spent in the training division and what it did for you?
Yeah, 100% agree that it's two different jobs. I was 2 years delayed getting online when I made lieutenant, and going into the training division, I really learned how to assist people with training skills and needs, and actually like department management and organization from the standpoint of training. And training division for any fire department out there is the vitals. It's the heart and lungs of every single fire department. So I took that job very serious, from day one. And you have to approach a job like that, and you can shrink it down to small unit leadership the same way, but everybody else's needs must come before your own while you're on the clock. It definitely did teach me a lot as far as how to train people correctly, because you have to be able to have that adaptive leadership and adapt your communication style based on the group that you're leading a training for. Leading a training for a year one firefighter, or even further back into an academy, your mindset and approach and leadership and communication style has to adjust to that, versus going out and leading a company training for a crew like Greg has, where, very senior crew. And I have kind of a blend of that on my crew as well, but it's definitely not a one-stop shop that fits all the boxes. You have to be able to adjust that, because as we know, the needs are different, right? I mean, when you have a very senior crew like that, chances are pretty slim, I think, that you're going to teach them something earth-shatteringly new that they haven't learned, So understanding that and focusing that training more towards sharpening those skills they already have is totally different from, a recruit that's in the academy that this is the first time that they're stretching a hose line or throwing a ladder, things like that. So, and that definitely did transition over to when I left the training division and came online, because, and Sam can attest to this too, we've both had a ton of recruits that have been assigned to our houses and directly to us as their company officers. Yeah, it definitely did help, and it's a cool challenge, because when you lead a company training with a recruit in that group, they have to fast track to get to those more advanced things that you might be teaching in a company training, and that just leads to a ton of like conversations with them, and breaking down those skills of how you get to where we're at this advanced level of a training, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that it was a really cool transition. I'm glad it went the way that it did. And coming out online after working on organizational management from a training division standpoint for the entire department and shrinking that down into small unit leadership was it made my job so much easier, I think, coming online from that standpoint. Not everything. And I'm
Right.
sure we'll get into those other things here, but from that standpoint of organizing, company training for the crews, it really was a cool segue in my career.
So true. And you are expected to be that lieutenant, that company officer, that captain is expected to be the training officer for that crew. And I think that that's one of those points that some people get it and some people don't. And the people that get it are the ones that are successful. And then you see those people that leave their crews and they're successful on every single crew they go to, especially those young impressionable ones from the start. And I just you mentioned you touched on some things there. You got to experience some things kind of bigger, kind of more strategic in that position because you're aware of what the multi-year training plan is. We've got plans for our, like you said, our new recruits coming out, our probationary firefighters, all the way up to our experienced operators, on the special teams and that sort of thing. And so it really teaches you to think bigger. And I think it's an area that we're definitely lacking in the fire service. And it makes sense, right? We don't have those long-term strategic experiences. We don't have project management experience. And a lot of what you're doing is managing projects. I mean, you are purchasing equipment, you're laying out training plans, that sort of thing. And it's actually something I plan to hit on a little bit as we go forward in this podcast, and specifically when it comes to officer preparation and officer development, is that our jobs are bigger than the 911 call. And in order to be good on that 911 call, we have to do all those things up front really, really well. And people need to know they're taken care of and that you've got a plan in place. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's something that not a lot of people get to experience. And we're going to talk a little bit more maybe about the different special teams you all have been involved in and how that has helped. I just think that any kind of organizational involvement you can have outside of just simply running 911 EMS and fire calls, it makes you grow substantially. And so I really appreciate you sharing that about the experience in training. Some people, I mean, I'm not going to lie, like we all know that not a lot of people are jumping into that role. They're testing for that company officer position. They want to be in that right front seat with the red helmet making the calls, right? And so it takes some patience, and you really have to see it for what it is, and it is a long-term investment. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Sam, how about you? How was your approach? Anything that kind of surprised you coming in as a new company officer, and what you've done to build relationships?
When I promoted and moved to Station 1, where I've been for the duration of my assignment, that's also where I was at Station 1 as a paramedic and a firefighter. So I knew all the people down there. Obviously, I did move shifts, but I would see them at shift change. And two of the members that I was going to now be a leader for were members that I went through academy with. In addition, I had one member that was 1 year away from retirement, and I received a brand new probationary firefighter within a few months of getting into that position. So I had this wide variety of people, personalities, different stages in their career, different motivations, and trying to fit myself into that, that's intimidating for anyone. And if I could offer any advice to anyone, that I feel that it helped me, was focus on the basics. Don't go in there and walk in like you're going to make changes and say, I'm the captain or the lieutenant now, and this is how it's going to be. Go in there, and it's going to take time. You need to use the first few months as a company officer as a time to gain intelligence on your crew and where you fit in with that. Human intelligence, emotional intelligence, operational intelligence, what the crew's tone is, and give yourself some time to figure that out. And I think those things will ultimately make you successful. During that time, while you're figuring out your crew and your assignment, maintain the accountability and standards that you've set for yourself that motivated you to promote or being an informal leader prior to promoting the entire way. Maintain your physical fitness. Maintain your positive relationships with your command staff, as well as when you're disseminating information down to your people. Maintain that level of respect, but hold yourself to a standard that's equal to or greater than the expectations that you gave your people, and let them see it. Motivate yourself to be out there training with your crew. Motivate yourself to be present when it's coming time to be doing terrible calls. Like, obviously the officer has to be the one that's involved in supervising and have somewhat of a setback, but when it's time to get your hands dirty, get in there. Be a boots on the ground company officer that's in the trenches with the crew, and that will build trust. Trust is basically currency within the fire service, and you will gain that trust through these actions on a day-to-day basis. Leadership isn't always going to be the thing that happens on the fire ground where you're making these profound calls or strategic plans. It's the day-to-day stuff in the firehouse that's going to cause those people to want to follow you, because you have held yourself to the standard, and they see that, and they are always watching. They're always watching. You are always establishing yourself on a day-to-day basis with the crew, and you need to be beyond reproach. And so that was what I decided for myself. That's the same standard I held for myself as a firefighter and a medic, was to place my crew first while still holding myself to the same standard of higher as them, and to lead from the front. And man, that will make you successful. It really does come down to those small things and that consistency.
I like that you talk about that in the firehouse stuff. That's when you are building, that's when you're building trust. That's when you're building those relationships. And I encourage everyone to listen to episode 5 with Fire Chief Chris Bloom. We talked a lot about the difference between what he calls command resonance versus command presence. So back in the day, we were always told you have to have this command presence on the fire ground, right? You have to be the one barking the orders. You have to have the answer. You have to be confident. And that doesn't take away from that. We still need to have confidence on the fire ground. But you build so much of that through your behavior off the fire ground. You're doing it through the company training. You're doing it behind the scenes when you are, like you said, Sam, you're just being a good example for your crews. You're not going to ask them to do anything that you're not going to do yourself. And it's amazing how far that goes. And it's those little things that do matter. I think if I heard you right, you were saying that you can't just become the officer after you get promoted.
And for those who are working on, eventually promoting, you are building that person now. You should be doing those things now. You are building that trust in the current rank you're at. The bugle doesn't make you a leader. You can be a leader at any rank. And we all know, we see those people within our department. We see people already that are leaders within our department who are not formally promoted. And what it really comes down to is the influence that you have on the people around you. Leadership is influence. Everybody's heard that. And are you influencing them in a positive way? Are you contributing to the overall mission of your team, that crew? Are you bringing those people up around you? Are you a consistent, reliable team member? If you focus on those things, when it does come time for you to enter into that process and you get that bugle and walk into the firehouse, those things will follow you as you enter. I think one of the most difficult things a company officer has to overcome is if they have a history in the past that maybe they weren't that person and they've worked to change it, but those people still recognize and remember that person. That is a huge hurdle. And boy, it's going to take a lot of time with that new crew to overcome that. So do those things now. Be genuine, be legitimate, be invested and engaged in the success of your overall crew, as well as what the mission is. And it even comes down to those routine calls. Be that steady, consistent person that's going to do the right thing for the customer and support the company officer and support the command staff. And that continues through the duration of your career and will make you successful as you progress through the ranks. I can't speak enough about how the small things matter and how they will follow you through your career and when you promote.
Isn't it amazing how good a firefighter's memory is for ridiculous things 20 years ago, but we can't remember the simple things that we did yesterday, but you do. And we're in a career where people work a lot of years. And so your reputation, it carries with you. I think everybody from the brand new firefighter on up needs to think about that as they're progressing through their career, because we remember everything, right or wrong. We remember everything. How about Sam, any challenges you had along the way, especially in those early years?
It's been a very interesting 3 years. I would say I'm fortunate because it's made me grow as a leader to encounter, um, pretty much everything that you could, I shouldn't say, I encountered a lot of different things involving personnel, calls, and stuff that I couldn't even make up, that I walked into the firehouse. Actually, even before I had moved to my assignment, I had my first personnel issue, 3 days. And I remember I discussed this with you on the phone. And it was blatant. It involved insubordination in front of a patient on a call, and I had to decide how I was going to handle this. And obviously, it needed to be handled right then and there. And I did that. And this was with a person who was much, much senior to me, which is why this came up. And it started immediately. And then upon going to my assignment, within 5 days of being on that assignment, I realized one of the members of my crew was not doing okay at all. And I had to figure out how to deal with that and find out what's going on, because he wasn't comfortable opening up to me yet, because I had just come down there and he didn't know me real well, but I could recognize through his behaviors and actions that he was not doing well physically and mentally. We did everything we could to help that person, and ultimately what happened is they don't work for the fire department anymore. Turns out that the job probably wasn't the best fit for that individual. But that was within the first hour of me walking in the station, something was wrong. And man, as soon as you get it, man, it starts. And it's amazing. You talk about these situations and these encounters with other leaders when you're going to these classes, or you're working on promoting, you're working on your acting officer's qualification manual, and you're like, well, how often is that really going to happen? And it's like, immediately. And it's going to happen. And I don't think people, when you haven't promoted and you're not in that supervisory position, realize how much stuff is really going on behind the scenes that the company officer needs to be involved with, and needs to be a resource for the people in the crew that they're in charge of supervising. I had calls within my first year that I never thought I would ever hear of happening. A confined space fire 75 feet above the ground with carbon monoxide readings in the 500s, booby traps, possibly trapped victims, and I have to encourage a firefighter that's scared of small spaces to make entry through a hatch and crawl in blacked out conditions to try to find a potential rescue. Was a division within the first year of being promoted on that call. It was a hazmat situation, a tech rescue situation. We had divisions set up. I don't think I would ever make up there'd be a fire inside a bridge 50 to 75 feet above the ground with immediate IDLH conditions and be a division. Like, what a great experience it was. The call sucked at the time. We were out there for 7 hours, but I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It's interesting from the get-go.
And you talked a little bit about the calls, and they do come at you. And that's probably the thing, especially when you are maybe in that acting role or you're aspiring to be a company officer, you think about the most, right? That's the stuff that keeps you up at night is, am I going to make the right decisions when I come on scene? Am I going to keep my crew safe? Am I going to say the right things on the radio? All that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, number one importance. So we need people that can act confidently and competently on the fire ground. That is a requirement. However, it's our people that often cause us those, the most nuance, or, Sam probably gets tired of me talking to him about the gray areas and everything, but you got hit hard and fast with the people stuff. And that is why I harp on this position more than any. I really think it's the most important position that we promote in the fire service. It's the one that gets me the most excited, but it's also the one that scares me the most. And it's why we're so darn selective and careful about who we put in there, because you all are the ones that are responsible for our people and can make or break attitudes and how they feel about coming to work every day. And so I appreciate you sharing those stories and, just being authentic about it. It wasn't easy. You didn't have all the answers, did you, Sam?
No. And the longer I'm in this position, I realize I don't have all the answers, man. It kind of just makes that more and more apparent on a daily basis. And I guess for somebody who hasn't sat in that seat, they're like, well, that person's supposed to be the one with all the answers. And it's like, you need to be knowledgeable, but still recognize that you need to be teachable at the same time, because, man, if you're not teachable, you're going to get caught with your pants down and get somebody hurt. You mentioned black and white. Everything in the military was black and white. If this certain situation happened on the battlefield, like an ambush, there was a battle drill specifically designed where you did exactly this. throw fragmentation grenades, overwhelming suppressive fire, assault through, double tap the enemy, and move forward. Or if you take contact, set up a flanking element, support by fire positions with machine guns, suppress the enemy, flank, assault through. Like, everything was built out. Even in paramedic rank, here's your protocols, telling you exactly what to do for each thing. As soon as you leave that rank and go to lieutenant, all of that goes out the window, because you can never prepare for the type of calls that I could never prepare for that situation that I talked about with the bridge. I remember when I was acting, I used to lay awake at night and try to rehearse in my mind every type of call that I would come to and then what I would do. And I realized after a couple months of losing sleep, I'm never going to be able to have a plan for every type of call, because there's going to be so many factors, human factors, building factors, hazard factors that are all going to play into my decision making. And what I need to do is rely on my gut and the experiences of my crew as well to help us make a right decision. I'm confident I don't have all the answers, but I'm confident in my ability to find a solution that's going to meet the need. And I think that's where the company officer really needs to be comfortable being, is, like you stated, in that gray where it's okay to not have the answer, but we're going to figure it out. And I'm going to make a good decision for the crew.
Well, Nolan, you've been at it for a little while. You definitely have all the answers, right?
Not even close. I'm sure we all know this, but fire service is a bottomless, endless pit of knowledge. Like, we're all going to get there one day where we walk away from this job and not seen or have done or be trained or educated on every corner of the job. But a couple of things I do, like Sam said, I mean, everything, but just a couple of things to hit on. As far as challenges, for those that are looking to promote, I just wanted to hit on the leading by example part. And it took me 3 times to get the lieutenant job. I got it on the 3rd try, but I'll never forget my first time taking the test. And I barely had any acting experience. I was well prepared as far as the reading list and all those things, but I just didn't have that street experience in the front seat yet, and I hung my hat heavily on leading by example. And there is a lot that goes into leading by example that's good and necessary. And a lot of what Sam talked about is, in that lieutenant position, leading from the front takes a lot of work, building up that crew trust. It's not going to happen day one. You walk in and congratulations, you got the badge on your shirt and now you're the lieutenant. It takes time. It really takes time in that position to build that trust. And really a lot of how you do that is leading by example. But it's not just your behavior, it's walking the walk with your crew, getting out there, pulling a hose line, throwing a ground ladder, and getting your reps, and your crew sees that you have a vested buy-in in their position. It goes so far. When you go out, like for actually all 4 of us here were from the medic background, but being out at that pump panel with the engineer when you're doing some, pump ops training and going, hey man, if I have this situation as a company officer, how's that going to look from your position? Pulling that pre-connect with that recruit firefighter, and all the way up to even if it's a senior firefighter, showing that you have a vested interest and buy-in in the skills they're expected to master as a firefighter. That's how you build that up in leading by example. However, the other part of that is that's not going to take you all the way. And back to what I said my first time I tested, well, I'm going to lead by example and everybody's just going to follow, me because I set a great example. That's not going to get you all the way there. I've learned that over time. A really good way to get there the rest of the way is at adaptive leadership. There's going to be those times where you can lead by example until you pass out, and it's not everybody's going to follow you. Being able to effectively communicate with your crews and with them as individuals takes understanding their communication style and what's going to work to make them effective. So leading by example is a huge part of this, but being able to adapt and effectively communicate, those are all things that take time to develop. It takes time to get, especially if you go to a crew when you promote that's different from Sam's situation where it's like whole different shift, whole different group of people. Of course you know them, but you haven't had, any significant time working with them. Getting to know your people and how to communicate with them is going to get you the rest of the way there. The other part I just want to hit on with trusting your crew, oh my gosh, that goes a long ways there. Greg and I both know, being at twos, being a double company house, that we have an engine and a truck company there. And on occasion, I'll get moved over to the truck company based on staffing needs and things like that. Well, Truck 2 is our technical rescue truck company. That is all things tech rescue. And I'm not a tech rescue person at all. I'll get moved over there to, supervise and lead a truck company, but that truck crew that I see on a daily basis, but I don't run calls with them. All of those truck crew individuals, engineer, firefighter, I've had sit down meetings with them and go, hey, if we get that big, gnarly tech rescue call today, it's your call. Of course, it's mine. They know what I mean as far as I'm going to have command, make sure things are safe. I'll get you all the equipment that you need, but how this thing is going to go, I'm trusting, you guys to set this thing up because you're the experts. That's how you build up that crew morale as well, by, tapping into, those on your crew that are specialists in that area, and have that mutual understanding that, hey, I am not the tech person. I'm going to trust you, to set these things up, to tee it up for us so that we can be successful and close the call out successfully. And it's going to be what you as the crew members do, not what I do. That really gives them that empowerment to okay, cool. I can trust this person that they're going to let me do my job. And they're going to keep me safe while I'm doing it, even though it's not their background, if that makes sense. So just a couple of things that I wanted to hit on and just add to what Sam said.
Very good points. And it's not that you're just turning it over to them. You know what you're going to get from them, and you're still ultimately responsible. So even though you may call on that SME to tell you or give you guidance, the rubber meets the road with you, that company officer. And I think that's again what's so important about this position, and that the reason we don't take it lightly. You guys are making some really difficult decisions under difficult conditions with very, very little time to do it, but you can't do it alone. And you do have to build your crew. You have to know them inside and out. And as you were talking about, most of that happens in the firehouse long before the call happens. And some of it happens through practical hands-on training, but some of it happens at the kitchen table. Some of it happens in side conversations. You are engaged all the time. And I think that's something that some people don't get right either, is they think that they are just, they're going to be there. They're going to be in the front seat. They're going to make the call on the emergency scene, but they don't realize the whole picture and the gravity of that position, right? Greg, just thinking, you're coming in fairly new to this thing. You had a little bit of time in the seat in an acting position, but how does the job change when you move from that acting role to the actual promoted role?
Right after I actually got the call from you asking me if I wanted to be a lieutenant, and I gave the yes, my email list just immediately exploded. Just added to everything, informed by everything, phone calls going left and right. I was acting that day, and I have a BC calling me, hey, I got a disciplinary issue that you need to deal with now. So congratulations on your promotion. Here's this for you. So, acting, you're not pretending to be a lieutenant. You need to be the lieutenant. But once you're in that role, that is 100% your responsibility 100% of the time. It's not the sometimes, and even if you want the promotion, whatever it is, you should be acting as that lieutenant, individual all the time. That should be your MO. But once you're, badge signed, you're off to the races. Here's your crew, here's what you're doing. Everything that happens under that roof is your responsibility. Everything that happens under that roof when you're not there is your responsibility. Everything that happens to your crew outside of that roof is your responsibility. All of it is on you 100% of the time. And I got to the point where I had to change my phone ringer to something sounding more professional, because my phone is always ringing now. So it's not a sometimes job. It is now an all the time job, and it includes stuff on my days off. It includes stuff on shift that doesn't necessarily pertain to that day or anything else. And you're always kind of thinking about the next step, and you're thinking about, how does the rest of this year lay out, because you can plan for that. Like there are situations that'll come up that'll change things, but you're still able to kind of plan all of this. And on top of that, you start getting added responsibilities, like being the newest officer on truck 2 for C shift, it's now my responsibility to teach C shift how to do truck work, because for the longest time that hasn't really been a big part of Westy. We've utilized and we've done some truck work, but it hasn't been like a big area of focus. Now we are kind of transitioning to this is becoming a big area of focus, and hey, truck 2 guy, you're in charge of it. So it's a lot of added responsibility, but it's a lot of fun too. It doesn't change what you're doing like as a person. You shouldn't change who you are. You should be that person all the time. You should still be you. But when it comes to actually doing the job and everything else, there's a lot more, you know, the not sexy stuff, you know, the not the fires, the not the running the calls. Like there's a lot of, you know, broken dishwashers and broken garage doors and everything else. And, you know, there's a lot of, hey, I didn't manage my vacation hours type of thing, and I need your help. So
No, that would never happen.
no, not once, especially not this time of year. There's a lot of just stuff that you don't really think about when you're getting into the position. I asked a lot of the same questions till I got a little bit deeper, and you know, we're starting to get up on testing season again here soon, and people are starting to ask me the same questions, and they're just thinking about like, how do I pass the written? How do I pass the ICS? What should I say in the interview? And they're not thinking about the totality of what this job is and how your influence circle grows. Because going out to fours, I was put on a crew that had kind of a revolving door because our department kind of had some needs to be filled. Eventually, I moved in there as an actor for a long term, and eventually I get promoted. A few months later, I go over there, and they're kind of whatever about me being their new lieutenant because they're like, you'll be gone soon. And the first thing that I did was just commit myself fully. It's not like I plan to be here at least through the year, hopefully longer, whatever. And it was just commit, commit, commit. And through that, I was using that circle of influence to influence the crew, influence the shift. But I was really trying to build our influence in the North area too. We run mutual aid with a bunch of departments, and my goal was to make that relationship as smooth, as easy as possible, and really start being like, hey, someone's kind of corralling this now. Like things should get, if there were any problems before, they should get better now, and start building those relationships up outside of the department and using that circle of influence. So it's a lot more than just, hey, you ride the front seat and hey, you're in charge of doing size ups and making tactical decisions. It's so much more than that. And it doesn't stop when you walk out the door. It doesn't start when you walk in the door.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the bit about the relationships outside of the department as well. For those that might be listening that aren't familiar with our department or where we're at geographically, we're in the North Denver area, but we run automatic aid. We've got a CAD to CAD automatic aid agreement, closest unit dispatching on all calls with basically 6 departments. And so we kind of overnight from being a small 6-station department to all of a sudden, I think we're over 35 stations now as far as our region goes. And so we really think regionally, but the only way to make that work is to build those relationships. And we are really relying on our company officers to do a lot of that work. And I know you guys have all been involved in that, and I'm glad you brought that up. Sam, you specifically being down on the south end of our city, you're in a border area. Can you talk about some of your experiences and how it is important to build those relationships outside of our department?
I think it's incredibly important. I mean, we're running with our south neighbor on probably half of our calls because being at ones and the busiest station, our medic unit is usually transporting to another hospital. So we frequently run with medic 12, medic 11, and we see them in our district. They're used to going to our frequent flyers and our common places like our retirement homes. And it's incredibly important to have that working relationship with the paramedics and the company officer on engine 12 or truck 11 or engine 11. And I know them all. I did blue card with the officer on engine 11. We went and had dinner with the new captain at Station 12 and his crew. I went to Red Rocks Fire Academy with the medic from his crew on Medic 12. And because of that, we have each other's phone numbers. We text. We let each other know if there's a training going on or if something that's going to take us out of service. Not all the time, but if it's something that possibly could affect a response or what we're used to, then we'll get a heads up. It's a very important aspect, and it's something that every department's used to dealing with. But I think as we continue to grow as a fire service nationally, auto aid is becoming a more frequent thing. There's budget restrictions, there's borders, there's stuff like that. And the community doesn't care what logo is on the side of the engine or the medic company that's showing up. They just want somebody to be there. Another thing to understand with that, though, is that there's going to be different cultures and there's going to be different personality types. And as Greg mentioned, you need to display ownership over your district. You are the district manager. You are a facility manager. You are a asset and apparatus manager. You are all those things when you're on scene. If you have other companies entering your district and say that there was a negative interaction in your presence with a member from there, then you need to do something about it. It's not acceptable. We need to maintain a level of customer service that's in keeping with what our customers are used to experiencing from Westminster Fire, that I'm very proud of, that I believe is a huge contributing factor to why we are doing well with our community and have a great reputation with people here. And we need to protect that legitimacy. And sometimes stuff happens and you need to address it. And I'm happy to say that's very infrequent and not really an issue. But at the same time, it's something that needs to be on the radar for the company officer, to have that 5,000-foot view of what you're doing. It's not just about your crew. It's about the community. It's about other departments within the city. Say you run in a municipal fire department like ours, you're going to have other departments such as water, as fleet, as the historical society, which right now with the Christmas tree lighting, that is a big deal to people. I need to recognize that is a priority and be an ambassador for our department in those situations and realize as the fire lieutenant, you are that ambassador who is embodying Westminster Fire when you meet with these people and establishing that credibility and protecting that legitimacy that we have worked so hard to build and maintain with our community is one of your priorities, one of the many priorities that you have as a company officer in your district. Working with our North area partners has been a great experience. We see them on fires, and a part of me does miss the days when it was all Westy showing up to structure fires because, man, it was fun, seeing that other engine and just maybe waving as you pass them by because you're beating them in so I'm like, that was fun. But things have changed now because we have neighbors that are closer and they're going to get dispatched to those fires and understanding their crew, trading with those crews as well. So you have a better understanding of their capabilities and they have a better understanding of yours is also something that is a new thing that I have a goal for this year down at Station 1 is to put together trainings with our neighboring fire stations so that we can train together. I know that some of our tactics are different, but overall we adopt pretty much similar strategies when operating on fire grounds. And I think it'd be very, very conducive to us doing company trainings together as engine companies and medic companies. And I think it'll make it even more streamlined on calls. Our neighbor gets a lot of fires and we're usually either first or second due because there's been a couple times where they're out running a medical call and we'll be first due in their district. Having an understanding of what their expectations are and how they operate is huge. So yeah, I can't say enough about it. I think it's a great model. It does give the citizens what they expect. They expect a fast response and they don't care what's on the shirt or on the side of the engine or medic company.
But you made it very clear. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? I mean, sometimes it gets a little messy down there in the trenches. And in the end, we have to think about what's right for our citizens and our overall service. Our response times have dropped dramatically and our ability to handle surges within our region are on a whole nother level right now. And so we always have to think about the why behind this. And there's give and take. And I think the officers that do take the time to go human to human with those other crews and not just wait till the call happens are the ones that are successful. And there's give and take, right? Of course, we never make any mistakes in our department, and everything that we do is the best way, right? But it's, and everybody's thinking that same thing in this region. And so with that, it's the relationships, it's the give and take, and just understanding the bigger mission. And I think that is what sometimes, especially that first line company officer might miss is because you get so wrapped up, especially when you're down there in the trenches and you're dealing with some really, really hard stuff. But you really have to understand what that mission is, and that's beneficial for your crews as well. And I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about that. Just we're in a difficult time, just with our fire service, with the type of calls we're running and stuff. But socially, it's a different place we're in right now, just in our country and around our kitchen tables and our firehouses. And I harp on it all the time, how important it is that we keep our crews mission focused and out of the division that's happening all around us. Our worlds are very, very polarized. And I'd just like to know if you guys have any tips or any thoughts on how you keep your kitchen table mission focused, your crew mission focused, and out of the weeds with the division and the polarization that's going on. Because that's, in my eyes, that's one of the company officer's biggest responsibilities. Because if you can't get along and you can't function in that firehouse, there's no way you're going to do it out on that fire scene. So I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that.
I think most that are preparing for the company officer position or that are already in it, they've heard this before, but it's important when you're talking, Chief, like the firehouse table, like let your people vent, let it get it off their chest. When it's been enough or it hits the point where it's starting to be counterproductive, that is your responsibility as that company officer to go, all right, we're done. I let you get it off your chest. We're moving on to the next thing. And you're right, it is challenging. And but the more that you set the standard of, not letting things get out of hand and control it, because you're right, if you let that thing just go wild, or even worse as the company officer, if you're part of it, and we have that big one later on, are we going to be able to function, as that highly effective unit because people are emotionally charged? So it is our job to ebb and flow those conversations like that. But as soon as they hit that point where this is getting out of, it's starting to get out of hand, or, this is not productive to what we're doing, it's our job to shut that down and carry on to the next topic for sure.
Greg, I'd like to hear from you, especially coming in new to this. I just remember when I became a brand new company officer, it was almost like something clicked, or I don't know, maybe my ears got better and I just started hearing more stuff. But you kind of lock into everything if you're doing it right? You have to be engaged. And you guys all touched on it, the importance of, you're not just clocking in and clocking out every day and going and running the calls. Like when you step up into a leadership role, we're expecting that you're engaged all day long, that your priority is them and your priority is that organization. And a lot of times it means that, your personal stuff comes along later in that priority list. Greg, do you have any thoughts on that? Or did the kitchen table conversation and just around the firehouse, did it seem to change when you became an officer?
No, the conversation didn't change. My role in the conversation changed a bit. My law enforcement experience gave me quite a bit. One of the biggest things that it gave me was my ability to hear things that people don't know I can hear. You're kind of always floating in and out of the room as an officer, whether you're going to your office to knock things out, going to the bay to check on X, Y, or Z, but you're picking up on little things, and some things will kind of give you pause as you're walking through or sitting at the table, where maybe the conversation that you have personally, you kind of diet down a little bit so you can kind of pay attention to what they're talking about. But like Nolan said, it's you got to give people the ability to vent. You got to give them time to get things off their chest. But there is a time where enough is enough. There is a time, like if we let things go too far, people can get in trouble for saying things that they shouldn't be saying, for one. But for two, like it can cause to lead to dissent. It can morale problems. Just people, man, I don't want to go to work because I got to work with this guy or this gal, and they got all these negative things to say all the time. And it just makes going to work that much harder. So without controlling the conversation, you still have to kind of control it, and you have to help dictate a little bit of the path sometimes when it's kind of going too dark or too far down a path where that it's going to be a lot harder to come back from. Just to touch on something, one thing about like crew expectations, every officer's got them. I talk about how mine are a little bit different, and I sometimes think we may have, like, some officers may miss the mark, to each their own, but I think they kind of miss the mark on career expectations in the fact of, sometimes you get handed a sheet of paper and it's basically got your job description on it. And that's not the intention. The intention of expectations is what's going to be acceptable and unacceptable when you're working on this crew and how you operate in this firehouse and operate in the field. And one of the biggest things for me is communication. And it's clear and honest communication is the biggest point made in that, where if we're clear, open, and honest and have a high level of integrity, we have the ability to protect one another from negative outcomes. So being able to police ourselves is a big part of it. But as the company officer, ultimately you're the designated adult. You have to police that conversation. You have to determine what's venting and what is a legitimate problem or could turn into that. So it's kind of interesting being at Station 2, and Nolan knows this, and Sam's worked there quite a bit, so he knows it. That was a big table with a lot of people, and there are about 20 different conversations going on at once. And as an officer, it's kind of hard because you have to be kind of clued into each conversation as time goes on. So, meal times they're interesting because you're down at one end having your own conversation, but at the same time you're keeping an ear out on everything else that's going on at that table. And there are certain phrases and things that'll perk me up and quiet me down for my own thing and kind of make me listen to that, whether it's, interest, negative or positive.
So let's pivot away a little bit from, we've been talking a lot about, I don't want to say the doom and gloom side of the job, but the serious side of the job, right? A lot of it has to do with the people. It's setting people up for success, that sort of thing. The job is also a lot of fun. I don't think I've had a better time in any position in the fire service than when I was, especially a first line company officer. I love being a lieutenant. It is so much fun. You can have so much positive influence on people, and you're just out there making decisions left and right and dealing with cool stuff. Let's talk about that more, the tactical side of the job, the response side of the job, because that is the fun part. Not always, but that's the fun part of what we get to do. It's also the part, we mentioned it earlier, it kind of will keep you up at night a little bit before you get into that role, wondering if you're going to have the ability to make all those crazy gray area decisions. I'd just like to talk about your approaches a little bit and what you found to be successful, especially in the early years, to gain that confidence you needed to know, because I never felt like I knew everything. I could be a company officer still today and not feel like I have even a fraction of the knowledge that I need. But I think there was a turning point. There was just a point where I realized I know my team. I know we can work through anything. I know that I know I've got enough training and enough common sense to work through the things that I need to work through. But it took a little while to get to that point. Sam, can you talk a little bit about your approach and anything that's been successful for you to kind of prepare you to deal with that gray area, to deal with those tough calls?
That's kind of a tough one, Chief. I think it's going to be different for everyone where they kind of find that stride. And I think what it really comes down to is experience in that seat. And it's different when you're an actor versus when you're promoted. Like Greg was saying, you're in that seat and you're accountable and you maintain ownership of that position on your 4-day as well. But being down at Station 1 and running the amount of calls that we've run, it really allowed me to experience some really difficult things early in my position or time in the position of lieutenant. And that builds confidence. And doesn't mean I have all the answers like I talked about earlier. But what it means is I've developed confidence in my ability to remain nuanced, to take a step back, see the whole incident, and then make a tactical decision that's going to set the incident up for success in the long term, which is really what that first line company officer is doing, is trying to set the incident up in the initial phase, that first 5 minutes where it's crucial to make the right decisions, not only for the outcome of the incident, but for the safety of the personnel operating on that scene. I think the experience has just lent itself to where at some point, probably I'd say, I don't know when I started to feel better. But at some point I hit it, and you're never going to have all the answers. And I want people out there who are listening to this to understand, if you feel that way, we all feel that way. I don't think that I have talked to a single company officer, some of them who I mean, you look at the Mike Lynch's that came through. That guy, I mean, I have so much respect for that individual and the things that he accomplished and the things he did, but he would be the first one to tell you, he's like, I still don't have all the answers, and he's retired now, and he would tell you that. So it's okay to be in that position. I think it's just building confidence in yourself and your team, and understanding and knowing what their capabilities are, that good crew resource management, and knowing when you're driving into work and you looked at staffing and you're looking at the weather and you're looking at all these things that are playing into your decision-making model when you're on scene. It just helps you find that stride where you know that you don't have all the answers, but you're going to figure it out, and you know that your crew is going to be successful. And now my goal is to create a team and a group that we want the hardest job on that scene, because I'm confident not only we will meet the expectations of our battalion chiefs, but our crew wants it. I know that there's not a single member on our crew that doesn't want the hardest assignment that is on that fire ground, and they will not only take that assignment, but they will exceed my expectations. My crew makes me successful at the job, and I think that's one thing that's really important for the company officer to understand, is that factor in things, and to feed that and to make that a culture within your station. It's the actions of your crew that make the company officer successful. It's not the officer. We're just giving initial directions. It's how they fulfill those tasks and roles that make the whole team successful. And they'll hit that, when you guys hit that stride, man, it feels, I'm gonna start getting my hands going here, because man, it just feels so good, where it's like, bring it on, man. Like, let's go, let's get some fires. I want it, let's go get it, because we're gonna solve it. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna make it better, and then we're gonna move on to the next one, and give us another one. And I remember we had a structure fire the other night. This was a couple months back, and first due engine company, the whole backyard's on fire, exposure's catching on fire, power lines are on fire, ammunition's exploding in this outbuilding, the whole attic's involved in the house, and we're there all night, first due pumper, every single line gets pulled off our engine. It's 4 a.m, and me and my engine crew are, we're cracking jokes, laughing at 4 a.m, scrubbing every piece of hose that we have and hanging it. We get done 20 minutes before we're ready to go off shift, and we couldn't be happier. What other job is like that, where you're just with these people that are so into doing it? And I can't speak enough about how fun the position of a company officer can be, especially in training. I'm on my 4th probie. I'm about to get my 5th in a month, and seeing them progress, where they come in that first day and they're not even sure if they're going to be able to accomplish some of the tasks that they need to accomplish as a firefighter, and then spending the time that it takes, which is a lot, to build them. And now they get it, they got it, they are a functioning member of the crew, and just seeing them progress and build is such a positive thing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Dang, you got me all fired up. Can I come back? Would I be allowed back, you think? Because I'd probably come back in a heartbeat.
Heck yeah, come on back.
Sam, is it an appropriate time to tell you we're going to have to ask you to leave Station 1 and move to Station 5 next year?
I knew you were going to bring that up at some point.
I was just joking. Sam
Please don't.
loves his role down there at Station 1, and they get into a lot of stuff. And when it comes to doing the job, that there's no better place to do it than our south side of the city. How about you, Nolan? What's kind of giving you that confidence that you need? And I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that it doesn't happen overnight, and you don't feel like you ever have enough of it. But, what are some of the tools you've had, or some of the experiences you've had that have kind of helped you get there?
Yeah, you're right. It goes without saying that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But first off, I just wanted to comment, Sam left me out on that fire he was talking about, because true to form, we were there and we got a water supply for him. So that's usually how our fires go, is Sam knows I'm his water supply guy. But that
Sorry.
was
I was not trying. It was a collaborative effort among multiple units, and no one would be successful without the other. But yes, thank you for the water supply.
As always, you're welcome. That's what we do at Twos. We supply one.
We definitely were out of water point. And that's not a good feeling, watching catch on fire and you have a hose line with no water coming out of it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Anytime. I was just kind of processing this question, and a lot of what Sam said is true. I mean, I didn't promote to lieutenant until I was 15 years on the job, so I had a lot of impression from some of our giants that are retired company officers now. Sam mentioned Mike Lynch, one of my favorite officers to work for. And I wanted to mention one of my biggest mentors still, even though he's retired now, and he always will be, is Tracy Hayes. I got to ride on the back of a giant, you know what I mean? Multiple giants through that time. And saw how they worked in that capacity, in that company officer capacity. So I think it's so important, and maybe we'll talk about it at some point. It's so important to have those mentors that are in or maybe even retired from that company officer role. It doesn't have to be even someone from your own department. I have two in particular that are not from our department that I've had to go. I've had the opportunity to go to their trainings, and you have those because you have someone that you want to emulate. Maybe not do the job exactly like they do, but they possess those qualities that you want to bring to the table when you become a company officer. Tracy in particular, when I went through my acting officer packet, I did that with him. For the Westie folks that know who Tracy is, just an incredible human being, incredible wealth of knowledge. I got to sponge off of that. But fast forward 15 years, and actually 17 years after coming out of the training division, I came online and it was like, congratulations, Lieutenant, you're Engine 2, and here's your new rookie. You get to train this brand new firefighter. The ace in the hole that I had at that time is I had a very senior engineer who's now retired that was Tracy Hayes' engineer for a lot of years. So I'm like, cool, like I see my opportunity to tap into a resource here. And that engineer in particular, Bob, he understood the situation where I was at, brand new coming out online. I had those discussions with him that hopefully any new officer has, is like, hey man, I don't have the answers to everything. I'm going to do my job and I'm going to lean on you as my right-hand man, when I need that. And I was definitely able to do that. And I think it's just important you tapped into those resources you have on your crew. As you're building that crew up, you're not going to let them fail, and vice versa. They're not going to let you fail, and that's how you start to develop that. Just like all the way back to the beginning, Chief, like you were saying, we've all had vastly different experiences within the fire service. I consider that a blessing still, that I didn't promote till I was about halfway through my career, and I learned how to do this job riding the backs of giants that are retired now, just incredible company officers, and I really had a good foundational base going into this by having those mentors that I'd worked for years and years and years. In my case, it was definitely a luxury to have that and go, that's how I want to lead a crew right there. This guy that I work for, that definitely teed me up for success.
We're pausing here, but the conversation is going to continue in part 2, where part 2 is going to focus more on mentorship and preparation for the role. Thanks to Greg, Sam, and Nolan, and all of you for tuning in. We hope to see you in part 2, set to drop Tuesday, January 6th. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share the show. It really does help us get it out there. If you have any feedback or ideas for future episode topics, please email opstalk.wfd@gmail.com. And we'll see y'all real soon.